Hi there, and welcome to my mobility and Pilates video for breaking down the side bend, where I will go over a few mobility exercises that might help improve your side bend work. For specific and individualized programming, please be sure to connect with me using the links below. The first thing that we're going to cover is the thoracic mobility needed to laterally bend in a side bend. So you're going to start kneeling upright as much as possible, stacking the hips over the knees, the rib cage over the hips, the upper spine and neck stacked over the shoulders. Then starting at the neck, bring chin towards the chest and try to individually segment each vertebrae into flexions, one vertebrae at a time, going through the neck, then the shirt collar area, then the vertebrae between the shoulder blades, all the way just until the thoracic spine is flexed, but the lumbar and the hips have not changed. Once you can no longer flex with just the upper back, maintain the flexion and rotate to the right, then try to restack your entire spine into a lateral side bend, but stacking the spine backwards as if you're lying it on a wall behind you. Then reverse that. Flex and rotate the spine to the right without shifting the hips back, and return to center. I'm going to go ahead and transition to face the back and show you the same movement from the back. If you want to transition with me, then great. You're flexing the spine and rolling over the hips back to a kneeling position, wrapping the arms into a bear hug, flexing the spine, flex and rotate, unwind to a lateral side bend, then reverse, flex and rotate. Again, not moving the hips back or flexing the lumbar, trying to keep the lower half of the body very still. That includes trying not to let the hips rotate. And again, I'm going to do a little transition and show you again what this looks like from the side. So again, stacking the spine as upright as possible, hips over knees, ribs over hips, flexing the thoracic spine, flex and rotate when you can no longer rotate, unwind to a lateral side bend. See how I'm stacking the spine back to an upright position, but in a lateral side bend, and reverse, flex and rotate left, unwind to left side bend, flex and rotate. Now you want to move as if you're moving through really thick mud, so you're creating an internal tension throughout all of these rotations. And again, if you want to do a fancy little transition, lifting through, flexion over the hips, and we'll do the other side. Restack the spine, and then starting at the neck, flex each vertebrae into flexion, flex and rotate. When you can no longer rotate, unwind the spine to an upright position in a lateral side bend, then reverse, flex and rotate, passing through center, feeling that internal tension as you continue rotating and side bend. Try to feel what each vertebrae in the spine is doing. Next, we're going to be moving on to the wrist and preparing them in order to be able to have the strength and control to bear weight on them. So you're going to find the end range stretch in your wrist, and there should be no pinching pain in the front of the wrist. Find your end range and back off a little bit, and we're going to try to press the hand through the floor, engaging the stuff that we're stretching for 10 seconds. Then you're going to actively use the other side of the joint to sustain the same distance between the back of the hand and the forearm, and hold that for 10 seconds. We're stretching one side and working that by pressing the hand through the floor for 10 seconds, and then trying to keep the same distance between the back of the hand and the forearm, and rock back just enough so that you can stick a piece of paper underneath the palm and hold that for 10 seconds. Again, there should be no pinching pain. You can repeat this anywhere between 3 to 8 sets. Then immediately follow with the exercises in wrist extension, trying to actively control and find that end range wrist extension, and try to stay in wrist extension and rotate towards the pinky side and then to the thumb side, maintaining end range wrist extension. We're going to repeat that same process, but working the wrist in wrist flexion in order to help create that space in the front of the joint. So you're going to have the back of the hand down towards the floor, and you're going to try to wrist extend or try to press the hand through the floor and hold that for 10 seconds, and then try to keep the same wrist flexion distance between the palm of the hand and the forearm. Rock forward just enough, again, to sustain the distance and hold for 10 seconds. Repeat. Find wrist flexion. Use the stretching tissue to actively press the hand through the floor, and then rock forward just enough to try to keep the distance between the palm and the forearm, actively working end range wrist flexion. Again, repeat anywhere between 3 to 8 sets, and immediately follow with wrist flexion, end range training, trying to stay in your wrist flexion as you rotate the wrist towards the pinky side and thumb side, at least 5 times each way. Let's go ahead and repeat all of that wrist work on the other wrist, finding end range wrist extension, using the stretching tissue to push the hand through the floor and holding that tension for 10 seconds. Then trying to sustain the same distance between the back of the hand and the forearm, working wrist extension and holding that for 10 seconds. Again, repeating these anywhere between 3 to 8 sets, and minding that there should be no pinching pain in the front of the joint. Immediately follow with wrist extension and range training, sustaining your end range wrist extension as you rotate the wrist to the pinky side and the thumb side, not moving the forearm, only moving at the wrist joint. And we'll go ahead and repeat that same process for wrist flexion, finding wrist flexion and range, backing off a little bit, and then pressing the back of the hand through the floor as if you're going into wrist extension, holding that tension for 10 seconds, and then rocking forward just enough to keep the distance between the palm of the hand and the forearm, holding that distance, holding that tension for 10 seconds. Then switch back to pressing the back of the hand through the floor, keeping that tension for 10 seconds, and then rocking forward, trying to keep or decrease the distance between the palm of the hand and the forearm and holding that tension for 10 seconds, repeating these anywhere between 3 to 8 sets. Immediately followed with the wrist flexion and range rotations, trying not to move the forearm as you find work in wrist and range wrist flexion, rotating towards the pinky side and the thumb side, at least 5 sets each way. The next and final joint that we're going to cover is the scapula. There needs to be a lot of scapular mobility and tension within that mobility in order to stabilize the scapula during sidebend. So we're going to go into scapular controlled articular rotations, building up into the progression of loading the scapula. Starting in a kneeling position or seated position, whichever is best for you, you're going to bring the scapula up towards the ear, keep the scapula up towards the ear and pull it back. Keep pulling back as you bring pull the scapula down. Keep pulling down as you press the scapula forward. Keep pressing the scapula forward as you go up and continue at least 3 times in each direction, then reverse. Pull the scapula up towards the ear. Keep pulling up as you go forward. Keep pulling forward as you go down. Keep pulling down as you pull back. Keep pulling back as you pull up, and keep going in this manner. The idea is to move to all of these end ranges and all the ranges in between with lots of tension throughout the scapula and body, as well as trying to have a smooth rotation throughout all these different ranges. So now we're going to do the same movement with the arm straight out to the side as if it will be supporting you in the side bend. So it's the same scapular up and back, back and down, down and forward, forward and up, and continue that circle at least 2 to 3 times each direction, then reverse, going up and forward, forward and down, down and back, back and up. Remember, trying to make this a very big motion, but the arm is staying directly out to the side. Repeat this, starting to build up to weight bearing by placing your hand to the side in line with your hip, and repeat the same process. Scapula pulled up and back, back and down and forward and up. Now you're pulling the scapula in all of these directions. You're not allowing your body to fall into the shoulder joint. There is a difference, so make sure that you're really actively pulling the scapula into all of these different ranges. Try to minimize the amount of spine movement going forward and back especially. All right, starting to build up to that side planking and side bend position, extending the top leg and kneeling partially on the bottom leg, and repeat. Scapula up towards the ear, up and back, back and down. Now you'll notice the forward motion is very limited, but still go for it. Really try to get those ranges, moving that scapula along the rib cage, up and down that spine, and feeling all those different ranges all the way around, minimizing the spine and rib cage movement. Let's go ahead and take it up to the side bend. You can either have the top foot parallel parked in front of the bottom foot, or make it even more challenging by stacking the top foot over the bottom foot, and repeat those scapular cars. Bring the scapula up towards the ear, up and back, back and down and forward, forward and up, going 2 to 3 times in each direction. And you'll notice how much harder these are in a single arm weight bearing position. If you'd like to join me for the rest of the mobility work for the side plank, be sure to use the links below to check out my website, where you can follow along with additional work for the shoulder joint going into side plank. Thanks for watching, and I hope you join me again.